A majority of the Democrats' far-left Senate nominees do not support Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. There's speculation AOC could challenge Schumer in the 2028 primaries. But now bettors are predicting she may be the Democrats' presidential nominee. So the DSA may turn to radical New York City Council member Osse to oust Schumer. He's forcefully criticized the minority leader, has the support of Hassan Piker, and is no stranger to posting far-left cringe on social media.
Did you know that some of Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights streets are named after slave owners? Well, I'm on a mission to change that. Do you love the snow? Do you have a zest for manual labor and being cold? I gotta get out of New York City. Wait, I'm not wealthy, nor are the wealthy leaving New York City.
All right, David, we're glad to have you on the show to get your economic perspective and your overall perspective on all of this and these DSA socialist candidates. You know, a lot of them seem to be birthed right here in New York City, as we're seeing with Mamdani and many others. But it's not isolated to New York City, and it's not isolated to blue cities or blue states either. And as much as they want to come for conservatives and President Trump, it seems like the first person on their target list is Chuck Schumer and perhaps Hakeem Jeffries.
Let's talk about Chuck Schumer first, because I'm going to use some fancy words, but his obsequiousness, his unctuousness, his toe-curling, painful fawning of El Sayed the other day was just extraordinary. I wish we could have put that up, but he was just like, I mean, he knows El Sayed hates him. He knows I know El Sayed says he's not DSA, but he essentially is. He follows all of their policies. He wants to rip up the Constitution, et cetera, just like the rest of them. But for him to say how wonderful El Sayed is, knowing that El Sayed would love it if he ends his period in the Senate, at least his period as the leader in the Senate. So he's screwed either way. If the DAS wins, they're going to kick him out as the leader, form a majority of Democrats to kick him out as the leader. And if they lose in November, he'll still be screwed because of the fact that he's essentially been so weak and appeasing of this group. Look at Jared Moskowitz, by the way, the guy who won against Larkin, the socialist who was running in Florida. Now, granted, the district did not favor Larkin as some districts did, and there was a DSA person who won in a district that was more radical. Angie, we'll talk about her later. But the point is that Moskowitz is a Democrat, moderate Democrat, Jewish moderate Democrat who stuck to his guns, has a bit of a backbone, wasn't afraid of the DSA, gave them help, made it very clear that they in no way are fit for office with all of the things that they've and he won. He won by almost 2-1. You guys did a brilliant job, by the way, last week in talking to Larkin, the guy that Moskowitz won against. You really spelled out very clearly exactly how radical he was. Something that Schumer had an opportunity to do. He didn't do it. Moskowitz did. Moskowitz won, and I think Schumer is going to lose.
Well, that's the discussion that's going to be had in the Democrat Party. I'd love to be on a fly on the wall for those discussions. So the Democrats are probably missing the leadership of Nancy Pelosi, I would assume. She was able to keep the squad at bay to some extent.
It was a different time.
It was a different time, but she also ruled with an iron fist, and you don't have that so much on the Democrat side anymore. Joey, in talking about these socialist candidates, and Angie Nixon is one that you alluded to here, when you see them in interviews, not only are they trying to moderate themselves, which is probably why, but if you dig just a little bit deeper, you take a couple layers off that onion, when questioned about their deeply held convictions, it kind of falls apart under even light scrutiny.
Yeah, the thing is, the candidates try to moderate themselves, but the people that they say represent their policy position and platform, the leaders in the DSA movement, don't moderate themselves at all. I mean, look at Hassan Piker. I mean, that's an easy one, but I can't remember her name. I think it was the vice chair of the party that came on the network last week and made a fool of herself in a couple of different shows. So, you know, if you join the DSA, then when those people go and talk, they're representing your policy positions. Now, you can argue nuance, but things like, you know, abolishing the Senate, I mean, that's a policy position. There's no nuance to that. What I find interesting, if you look at the list of those that are running for Senate in competitive states that say they would get rid of Schumer versus the ones that Democrats say Schumer helped recruit, you've got Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota, El Sayed in Michigan, Troy Jackson in Maine. Maine. That's kind of an even split there, with maybe the Maine being kind of the one way or the other. But I think Michigan, I mean, you're looking at probably one that leans Republican, one that leans blue, and one that may be more of a toss-up. But then you look at who Schumer has endorsed and brought in. You got Roy Cooper in North Carolina, Sherrod Brown in Ohio, Josh Turek in Iowa. All three of them have a really good chance to win, but it's a competitive state. It's a toss-up. And then you've got Peltola there in Alaska, and you would hope that Sullivan can hang on to it, but you don't know. And so what I mean by that is you might have an actual scorecard that says whether Schumer has earned the right to be the Senate majority or minority leader at the end of this based on how those candidates do. The battle lines have essentially been drawn.
Alicia, what part does social media play in this? Because if you look at these candidates that are running and winning, that are getting at least support from Democrats, they all have an impressive social media presence and following. Has it become a time in the Democrat Party where your follower count and your engagement algorithm actually matter more than your track record or even your fundraising?
Well, the DSA is taking up all the oxygen in the room for Democrats, and they can't get a word in edgewise when it comes to any semblance of logic that they can cobble together, because they're still trying to figure out in 2026 who they are after they got stomped on in 2024. So, yes, I think social media plays a very large part. I feel like the Democrats are, but they're fighting amongst themselves. The DSA is not the Democratic Party. There are members of the Democratic Party who say that, but then some of them are scared to say that out loud. So it's this big mess that they're still trying to figure out as they're going to start heading into 2028. I think it's a huge problem. But I'm also, to pick up on something Joey said, when we're talking about the DSA and statewide races, they are not a proven entity just yet. And what that means for the Senate will be more important, because if Chuck Schumer is able to pull some people across the line and that number outscores the DSA in any significant way, that will matter.
I think the one thing we know is that the Democrat Party is going to continue to go to the left. Whether the DSA takes it over in the next couple years or not, they're going to have to move further to the left to appease this grassroots DSA socialist communist hybrid that they've created.
I don't think they know who they want to be. They want to be who's popular, and whatever that means, then they're willing to do it. And so,
Alicia, I would say that they know exactly who they want to be. They just don't want to be honest about it, which is why I always say at least the DSA candidates tell you exactly what they want to do, because I think if a lot of these Democrats were honest, they want mostly the exact same things down the list. They're just not brave enough to say it out loud.
By the way, that list also includes, we should forget, getting rid of the military. Getting rid of the defense of the United States, defund the Pentagon. I mean, come on, folks. It's not just defund the police. Defund America. That's their platform.
Defund America, but fund those at the top, right? And not those at the top that they often say that they're against. Those at the top is in the reigning class. Yeah. That's how socialism and communism works. All right.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.